So I'm convinced that what we should really be doing is, because we have good practices, there are farmers really just working hard, day in, day out, really, just to keep the footprint low. You need to start rewarding those farmers really for their activities. So you need to get a reward system in place. I call that the race to the top. So where a farmer is getting recognized for, of course, the quality, for the price or the cost, and the environmental footprint.
If we are looking at consumer patterns, is the dairy industry and the beef industry ready to deliver? That is the topic I'm going to discuss with Ivo Lansbergen, President of dsm-firmenich Animal Nutrition and Health. My name is Zana van Dijk, Editor of Dairy Global, and this series is in cooperation with dsm-firmenich Animal Nutrition and Health. So welcome, Ivo. Thank you for joining us today. In your presentation, you talked a bit about precision nutrition, which is a focus point for dsm-firmenich. In terms of animal production, this is key in a sustainable industry. Could you tell me a little bit how this ties in with consumer patterns currently?
Yeah, I think it goes all the way from the consumer all the way back to farming in itself. I think consumers are looking to buy more sustainable products. So that's number one. But if you and me, actually, we go to the retail shop and we try to buy a product, you decide typically within a split second what to buy based on price, quality, brand. Of course, familiar products you probably tend to buy quite often. The one thing you don't know is the environmental footprint. You make quick assumptions maybe on certain things. In my view, that needs to be becoming front of pack. That needs to become part of the decision profile as well of products. And then, of course, before you can go and make a statement on environmental impact of a product, a little bit like we've seen in the white goods space or in a car, you see A to E and all these kind of labeling. Very standardized labeling, but it gives you a bit of a flavor and you can start comparing products.
Yeah, it gives you a quick insight.
It gives you a very quick insight in terms of, oh, that product is maybe better than, and it's not to say that you should only go for the most sustainable, but at least you as a consumer, you will actually have a chance to see what's the environmental footprint and then make a choice based on price, on quality, and then of course environmental footprint. So that's one. But then to go there, you can't actually go for that system if you don't have data. If you don't have data from further down the value chain, you can't just stick a label on it and just come up with an approximation. It needs to be fairly accurate.
Yeah.
So I think it will require data and of course therefore digitalization into the value chain to make that actually possible.
To get to that point.
To get to the point, exactly.
So it seems it needs to be more transparent to consumers. So how to make the choice easier, because I think you also said that at the moment consumers have too much choice, and that's not always a good thing. What can the dairy industry, for example, do to make transparency easier, better?
Yeah. No, I might actually say something a bit controversial, but I think at the end of the day, what you see is that a lot of brands, and it's not only in dairy space, of course, but a lot of brands, they come up with their own labeling. And a little bit dsm-firmenich is doing it as well. We do this actually for you want to differentiate yourself. You want to distinguish yourself maybe from competition by making your product more attractive, etc., more likable by the consumer, so they buy your product. The problem with that is that you get all kind of different labeling. So you have company X, Y, and Z, and they come up with their own branding, their own labeling, etc. And that's when the consumer starts getting confused, because they can't compare one product with the other. Everyone is using different standards and more. So I think we need to come up with one kind of more common language, one standard, as I just mentioned, which then actually will give that transparency to consumers and a fair degree of comparability. That's going to be a critical one. Now, is it always going to be of the interest of the different companies? No, but I think I would like to say that we have a duty here. It did work again, as I mentioned, in the white space arena, i.e. electronics, also cars, etc. Why not in animal proteins?
We need more uniformity, I suppose.
Uniformity
as well.
is the word, correct.
So in terms of environmental labeling, could you tell me a little bit about why that is important? Is it important, do you think?
I think it's
and where are we in this journey of
I think it's hugely important. And the reason why I'm actually so convinced on that is that typically you have a statement on, let's say, dairy or poultry or eggs, and they're being categorized with a certain footprint. So you read the newspaper, and in the newspaper it says X kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of or liter of milk. Great. But that's an average.
Yeah.
And if you then compare the extremes between how to come to the average, and if you compare the extremes, you see there's a delta of 30, 40, 50% sometimes.
Yeah.
Just already now.
Yeah.
So I'm convinced that what we should really be doing is, because we have good practices, there are farmers really just working hard, day in, day out, really, just to keep the footprint low. You need to start rewarding those farmers really for their activities. So you need to get a reward system in place. I call that the race to the top. So where a farmer is getting recognized for, of course, the quality, for the price or the cost, and the environmental footprint. And if you actually get that, you build in an incentive system for farmers to continuously improve. Yeah. And so that's what I mean with creating a race to the top. I think all the technologies are there, but if it's the farmers who need to pick up the bill continuously, you will not see a lot of traction. No. So we need to build that system. That's why you heard me speak a lot actually also in my opening speech, that we need to do this together. It cannot be just on the farmers. It cannot be on the feed additive players or on the FMC.
Or this just the retail.
No, it needs to be along the value chain. Yeah. Build that system where this is going to be recognized. Yeah. Because the retailers, they will depend actually on the one further down. Then they will actually depend on the farmers, and the farmers will depend on companies like dsm-firmenich. Yeah. So if we don't really get our act together, it will not fly. Yeah,
of course. And it needs to be specific to the farm as well, like you say, being rewarded for what they do. Yeah. My next question was about what do feed and food producers need to do? You touched a bit on that, but just to go a step back, where do they start? You know, who starts this journey?
Who starts this journey? I think I think it's not starting anywhere specifically, because you see now the pressure actually mounting from multiple angles. Number one, you see financial institutions, some of them actually being even legally prosecuted for subsidizing maybe an industry which is not sustainable. You see companies being actually prosecuted as well for making false claims. So you see the legal side of it actually taking place. You see the financial side of it actually also making a big impact. You see in general the consumers, of course, taking place here. Political, you see many kind of pressure. So it's not just where does it start. It's coming from all angles, and I think rightfully so. I think climate change, the change that we see all around us. Yeah, I think we have a time for talking and discussion, and I think we are now in the phase of doing, because we have no time to lose. Yeah,
the agenda, as you said in your presentation, needs to be set in terms of sustainability.
Yeah. But the good news is, and that's for me also the message of optimism and a little bit of hope. I think we have the technologies. We can do it. You know, already now, if you see some farmers being 40, 50% better than, let's say, sometimes even the average. Yeah. So it's for me a proof point that it can be done, but you only need to put that system in place then to make sure that they get rewarded for that. Yeah.
So apart from rewards, for example, what other positive aspects are there at farm level? Yeah. Do you think there will be with these changes happening?
No, I think that there's a couple of them actually. So I come actually from a completely different industry, as you probably know, electronics, automotive, and typically what you see there, if you add more of the kind of environmental claims on top of a car or a mobile phone, it's going to be costing more. Now, I will not say that in the animal protein it's the reverse, but there's absolutely a lot of examples where environment is not necessarily negative for the money you actually earn as a farmer. So I'll give you one very strong example, is use of feed enzymes. Yeah. The business case, the ROI, the return on investment, for using a feed enzyme only goes up if you start actually also getting rewarded for the CO2 emissions. You start reducing. So on top of the feed conversion, which you actually economically benefit from as a farmer, you then also get actually the environmental benefit from CO2 reduction. So if a farmer would then also get a benefit on CO2, for example, plus the feed conversion, there's a double whammy. So environment and the financial gains are not necessarily contradictory, and I think there we also need to step out of that starting point, because I see that actually being mentioned many times. Oh, it's going to cost more.
Yeah, but in the end, it's also about the journey and the end, game and where you want to get to.
Sure. But I just want to zoom in a little bit further on that CO2 topic as well, because I do think that farmers can actually be in a strong position of being the solution as well. So that there's a lot of talk about CO2 sequestration, so i.e. Getting the CO2 into the ground, so keeping into the soil, exactly. But you can also then get that actually further down the value chain for insetting purposes. So you could actually start looking into farmers really as a part of the solution rather than instead of the source of all the problems. So it requires a different mindset here.
It needs to be switched.
It needs to be switched, and looking into, in my view again, the farmers, to give them the incentives to do what's right.
So very important. Lots needs to change, I think, in terms of mindset.
Now the good news is, I think I see it's happening already to some extent. A very good example, I think, is on Bovaer. So we are ramping up on Bovaer right now.
So you have approval in the US recently.
And that was one of the fastest approvals ever for FDA.
Right.
Just imagine why. So there must be a good reason for this. Number one, of course, because the product works, so okay, fine. But also because of the necessity seen by the US government, of course,
to reduce.
That we have to do something about methane. Bovaer has been launched a few years ago. Of course, we worked on that for the last 10 years, or 15 years, I should say. So 10 years in the making, R&D in the last 4 or 5 years. We've been commercially trying it out and actually ramping up. And of course, by 2025, we will have a big plant.
So how many countries do you have at the moment?
I don't know by heart now anymore, because it's ramping up so fast.
So fast,
And of course, because your question is quite specific, we have, for example, the EU. So you normally get an approval for EU. Now, how many countries are in EU? Now you're doing a bit of a test on me. I don't know. 2025, I don't know. But there's quite a number of countries. But EU, of course, but also Brazil actually has been approved, which is actually being approved now in the United States. So let's say the major dairy producing countries, that's where we have the approval. The one which is still not actually approved yet, pending, or I hope that they will actually start looking into it, because I think it's an important country, is China. So of course there's a big one as well. Now hopefully they follow suit and they see what's happening in the United States, EU, Brazil, and of course many other countries in the world. China is still the one. In all fairness, also dsm-firmenich has not been strongly focused for Bovaer on China, for the launch of Bovaer in China. So that's also a little bit down to us. So it's not criticism to Chinese government, but I hope that they will start looking into this pretty quickly as well. So because it's about methane. That's the whole topic. If you really want to get to the 1.5 degrees, you better start looking to reduce methane. And of course, everyone is looking after CO2, absolutely spot on, we need to do that. But if you're only going to look into CO2, we will exceed that 1.5 degrees. It's methane which will actually, hopefully, will still actually stay within the 1.5 degrees. That's our own solution still.
So we'll hear more about that. And China as well, of course. So in terms of consumer patterns, you did focus a lot on that. What other consumer patterns are there that you think we need to take note of that will affect the food and feed industry? I think what I see happening all around is, of course, animal welfare and animal health in general. And I think also the use of antibiotics. Now, that's nothing new. It's definitely still actually a topic in some countries. I'm just answering your question not from a European perspective, but also in the European context, of course, AMR, antimicrobial resistance, is still a topic for us, so we need to keep an eye on that, and that's also in the minds actually of consumers. But clearly, of course, consumers are also concerned about cost, and we've seen it actually happening over the last couple of years when feed costs actually went through the roof. So being dependent on foreign nations, and in this case actually you saw a lot of prices actually going up because of Russia, the Russian war with Ukraine, that actually shot up prices of feed. Had a major impact.
So I don't think the consumer necessarily then actually starts making that link, but I think the element of becoming a little bit independent of other foreign nations is definitely a topic, I think, in our industry, in our value chain. Needs to be factored in. So can you start using feed sources to feed your animals, and you have more locally grown, if you like. I think another very important point, I mentioned that earlier, on animal health and welfare, but let's not forget about the topic about deforestation. Very much linked again, of course, to climate change and of course the boundaries of planet Earth. So deforestation is a very important topic as well. So you see that coming more and more actually into the mind space of consumers.
Yeah.
Do they think about it when they actually buy a poulet or a chicken actually in the retailing? No, probably not. Not at that point in time. But it is an important factor. Now, another factor, of course, clearly is the drive for plant-based proteins. You see that actually still growing, although not growing at the same pace as it used to be. I can't remember the exact percentages, but it was very strong growth, more than double digit.
Yeah.
That's tapering off a little bit. And I think that's also to do with two effects. Number one, animal proteins, they were, I would say, one of the sources of inflation. If you look into inflation over the last couple of years, we've seen 10%, 12%, very historically high inflation numbers. In the top 5, clearly energy, number one, clear. But in the top 5,
that affects prices as well.
That affects the prices, of course, in itself. But animal protein prices also went up, not only because of energy, but also because of feed. And there we saw a huge price increase, actually. So what you saw happening over the last couple of years, that eggs, actually, the prices of eggs actually went up, dairy went up, now many actually went up. That is in some countries, and most countries actually, is subsiding now, feed is coming down. But of course that coincided as well with the whole drive for plant-based alternatives.
Exactly, yes.
So you saw quite a bit of demand for plant-based alternatives. What is also happening at the moment, of course, is the realization that sometimes there's a disappointment in the product itself. It's not as or the same, maybe, from a taste.
Yes.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
So that disappointment is also creeping in. So you have that element, of course, where consumers try it out. I tried it as well, just to see what it's like. And then if you are disappointed, then what do? Then you start referring back again to, let's say, the original or the replacement one, apparently, dairy or chicken breast or fish, etc. So I think these are kind of trends which are inevitable, but I do think that animal protein there is there to stay.
Is there to stay.
That's for me clear. And because the whole reason as well for many people, I think it's also a very important point for me. Many people actually, they switch to alternatives. And why? Of course, animal health and welfare is one topic. And at the end of the day, you have to slaughter an animal to eat it.
Yes.
As simple as that. Dairy is slightly different. But then if you think about actually the whole trend, let's face it, if you have that disappointment, that's one. But we also have
different to what you expect.
And we have then also a growing population, and a growing population actually will increase. Maybe population in Europe is not growing that much, or in North America, but in Africa, in Asia, and Latam, actually we see a growing population. So, am I optimistic on animal protein consumption? Yes. And let's not forget, there's many people buying those alternatives, also from an environmental footprinting perspective. Say, okay, right. That's less environmentally, let's say, burdening the planet versus animal proteins. But if I now come back to what I said earlier on the dairies, a dairy example where you can reduce 50% to the best in class, you come pretty close to the plant-based. So if you then can actually say, right, okay, let's now compare a plant-based alternative with a dairy at best in class, I'm not sure how they are actually comparing. Definitely if you start looking into on a nutritional comparison. So on a gram by gram basis, i.e. if let's take protein now, the protein level of dairy and the protein level in plant, and then compare like for like.
What the difference is.
How do they compare? And if you have that data on front of pack, then it's ultimately at the consumer to say, I like this brand, I like the quality, I like the taste.
And the reasons for changing or choosing become more apparent.
And it's not based on perception, it's based on data.
Actual reality.
Facts.
Facts.
That's where we need to go.
That's where you are, So in terms of dsm-firmenich offers more precision services like Sistel to kind of see what impact it has on an environment from a farm level, for example. What is next for the company? Can you reveal? Is there something new?
No, we have just announced actually 15th February that we will spin off animal nutrition, carve out, separate it out. So that actually occupies, of course, a lot of resources and people. At the same time, we have launched quite a number of services, including actually FarmTel, which is the the rebranded name for the product acquisition we did 1.5 years ago. So we've been actually speeding up, but also actually investing a lot of money into the space of what I call them precision services and precision nutrition. So for me, the aim is really to make sure that we are gonna implement that and not really start expanding and already go to the next thing. I think we have the tools, we have the capabilities there. I'm going to be more looking for partnerships together with, as I mentioned earlier, in the value chain, make sure that we start making use of those tools.
For growth and
for growth.
implementation.
So that's, of course, there will be innovations coming up. Trust me.
You're not ready to reveal those yet.
I'm not going to reveal them, but the innovation pipeline is really healthy. That's actually one of my proud moments, really, to say that if I look into where we came from and where we are now, it's very healthy.
It's been a great journey.
That's on the product side. And now, if you combine it actually with digital tooling, that becomes very powerful, of course, because then you can really go for precision solutions, precision nutrition, precision solutions. So not just go for an all-out solution. No, we can actually then start advising a farmer. I see this environmental footprint here of your farm. And this is what we advise you to do. Or I see your animals actually suffering from this disease, or we see this coming up. This is what we recommend you to do.
It's very specific then.
Very specific for that farm. And that's where I think the industry is going to go.
Needs to go.
Because that already has been happening in the crop space as well. I think it's also going to happen in the animal husbandry space as well.
Well, thank you, Ivo, for joining us today and sharing your insights with us.
Thanks.
And thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
And thank you for watching Future Feed Talks. If you want to see more episodes or listen to our podcasts, please click on the links below.